Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling as we get ready for a Saturday card, a 9-race card here at Aqueduct. Expecting a little snow later that's going to turn to rain, so we've moved post times up a little bit to try to get ahead of that snow, which is scheduled in the close to the 4 to 5 area. But anyway, glad to be racing and looking forward to today's card as well.
Yeah, it's a decent card. It's competitive. We have a stakes race for the New York breds as well early on.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Mama's Gold can do turning back. She's been so incredibly impressive going long, and you just wonder if turning back could somewhat mute her performance. But he has been really, really good. I'm interested to see him in the Say Florida Sandy. Of course, I was looking at Say Florida Sandy's record. He was like 37 for 98. In his 98 race career, he ran 41 triple-digit buyers.
That's
which
incredible.
I think is the number, for some reasons, like 41 or 43 is the number that Firm Success ran. Now, I don't think he ran that many times, but still, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of numbers in there. They're not 101s and 103s. There's some 108s. There's some big numbers. And he kept some good company. It's fun when we talk about horses like that to print their old PPs. And, of course, I remember him racing well going back about 25 or more years. Head over to Naira Bets. If you're not a member of Naira Bets, use the promo code BONUS200 and we'll match $200 of your initial deposit. Head on over to Track Stats while you're at Naira Bets as well. Check them out. Then you've got a money-back guarantee, $10 win bet on the Risen Star. If yours finishes second, third, you get your money back. A race where East Avenue with the scratch of Jonathan's Way is going to be a substantial favorite, going a mile and eighth in his return. I'm curious to see what he has. The horse that's, I guess, going to be the second choice without him in there is Built.
Right.
I don't get that horse. Do you?
I think it's more of a connections and the hype early on rather than what he's done lately because the last race was slow.
Unless you want to say maybe he didn't run as well on a wet track, because he did run a big figure his prior race on a dry track. So maybe, unfortunately, for them on a big day, it's supposed to be some rain at like 8:30 or 9, but it looks like they'll get to the car, assuming they are running the Risen Star before 9 o'clock, right?
It'll still be dark.
You never
but
really
yes.
know. Yeah. Well, you got to run the big races in the dark. Anyhow, 14 race card down at Fairgrounds as well. Interested in looking at some of those races, but we'll talk about ours. Race number 1, Sweet Lilac, who, I don't know, she might have been one of the favorites, if not the favorite in this race. I'm not sure where David had her in the morning line. That horse is scratched. I found this race, no, we don't need a replay, guys. She's scratched. I just copped out. I took Global Charmer. My opinion on Global Charmer was I looked at the race. I said, they all can't run. I don't want to pick any of them. None of them have done a single thing to suggest to me they're any better than they look on paper. And Global Charmer, who was eased in her first start, she hasn't proven yet to me unequivocally that she can't run. Now, she gave a pretty good demonstration of a horse that can't run.
Some hints.
But I'm going to hope dropping down second time for Linda that she's a different horse. They did, a global campaign. So I took the cop-out way with her because, frankly, I don't like any of these
Which
horses.
is fair. You have to kind of treat her as a first-time starter because we have no idea what she's capable or incapable of.
I don't know if it's
and
fair.
It seems as though
It might just be a cop-out on my part.
in this spot, it's just it makes sense to look for a horse that has maybe potentially some upside or lack of disappointment.
Well,
far.
she's definitely got theoretical upside at this
Yes.
point because she probably wrote one worse than she ran last time.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely understand going with that one. I just wanted a horse that has run at this level, and at least I have an excuse for the race going a mile for Awesome Roberta. Adding blinkers at this point, I don't like that
What
she
was
didn't
the
get
excuse besides a wet track?
going a mile.
Oh, a mile. Awesome Roberta.
back.
What about her race last time? She was
don't
awful.
I don't like that she did not go by Sweet Lilac,
She
who was
was
a gigantic
awful
price
in
in that
there.
race. But I will say, Horacio de Paz, blinkers going on in maiden claiming races, first-time blinkers, pretty incredible stats, 20%, $3.80 ROI, which is inflated by a horse that was a big price. But the others were 8-1 favored, 3-1, 4-1. So he's had some success doing that, and maybe, just maybe, that's a little bit of a difference for
I
her.
hear you. Listen, there's no horse in this race that I would criticize anybody for picking in here, given who I picked in this race. I would never bet on Bubby Dearest, who, I think a lot of times she's a horse that you're sort of drawn to in this race because she hasn't been racing. If you don't want the 7 or you don't want the first-time starter, you've got a bunch of horses that have been racing and racing pretty lousy. And then you have her say, oh, she hasn't run since October. The trainer switched to Amelia Green, who, for people not familiar with her, she had worked for Todd Pletcher for many years. She's recently gone out on her own, hasn't had too many starters, but she did have that horse break its maiden with her first starter. No reason to assume the horse can't run well for her, but she's getting the horse from Mike Maker. And for people whose, my memory is good enough that at least I saw her for a half a second and said, oh, I'll pick Bubby Dearest, and I realized, no, she's awful. I mean, that race 2 back when she lost was one of the more embarrassing. The
That
horse
was
that won the race
the most entertaining lower level race I think
ever,
we've had. In
ever, right. The winner of the race got completely and totally left, came
Yep.
from way out of it,
Yep.
and she's just, listen, I'm not saying she can't win here because
Right.
she can win here, but man, she is one that falls apart under any serious scrutiny. We'll see what happens in race number 1. Race number 2, we lost Exploration. Don't know how strong she was. We'll start out with the horse that you have on top in here, and that's the number 3, Radio Red, who I don't disagree ran well in here. I just never trusted this horse. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, came back fresh and ran one of his races that was in line with some of his faster races when he was in good form prior to that, when he had been racing consistently. And this was sort of the outlier of the day when you really wanted to have forward position and be the early speed, and not a lot of horses were making up any substantial ground. And this was the point of the day where every rider realized that they wanted to be forward, so the pace started to come apart. He lost to his stablemate, who should have been on his own a much bigger price.
Except the race didn't really come apart. The winner of the race came from last up the rail. I mean,
Well,
this
compared
horse
to
was
the
on
rest
the
of the
pace.
races that day.
Shipstation. No, I'm not arguing that. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is,
But that's fair.
You know, I agree with what you said, but I just don't think this. I mean, Print Rack finished 4th, right?
Right.
Who was setting the pace.
Yeah.
He came back and ran horrendously. Shipsational, who they rode to be in the race because of the track, which I respect, did hang around for 3rd. So it's a weird kind of race
Yeah.
where it didn't completely fall apart. Not saying that Radio Red didn't run well, because I agree with you. He did run well.
Yeah, I agree. If this was on a fair track, it wouldn't look like that whatsoever, just in comparison to the rest of the day. This was the only race where anybody made a somewhat of a move and was able to change their position.
Made a big move from dead last.
Yeah, absolutely. So if he just had that race, I'd say that he was with the racetrack, but it's in line with some of the races he was running before he went to the bench.
I'm not going to argue with any of that. He can absolutely win. He's 8-5 on the morning line. So I don't, you know, I'm not, he's not totally my cup of tea, but he's probably the horse to beat in here. You know, I think it's an interesting race. Antonio of Venice, a horse that you and I don't particularly like in here, but he is at least getting back to a dry track for the first time since he's come off the layoff. Obviously, What's Up Bro is good, but the problem that I have with What's Up Bro is he's really a need-to-lead type, and I can't see unless the one gets left. And here he is running a good race 2 races back when second to Mandatory, who was on a monster tear at that point. But with What's Up Bro, how's he getting the lead from the one in this race? You know Romero, unless the one gets left, Romero's going to come out firing from the inside.
Right, I agree completely, and it's not as though there are others that are absolutely slow in here either. And with What's Up Bro, when the good What's Up Bro runs, he's too fast for what he's going to be facing in here for the most part, but he doesn't really run well fresh. He needs to sort of get going and get into some of his better races. When he's come back in some of his races off some time away, they're not his best efforts.
Well, I would argue with you what he really did was get better for Linda.
That's also
Because his
fair.
best race for Linda, the problem I have more than that, and in my opinion, is he's never shown he can win without the lead. He feels like a horse that wants to control to run his best races, and I just don't foresee that happening with Antonio of Venice in here. And Ignite the Light is a horse where I'm just willing to take a little bit of a chance, and curious to see how he runs, because the horse who finished second to him, Badge of War, is in kind of an interesting maiden race on Monday. I think it'll be interesting to see if that figure holds up, because the figure is a little bit hard to stomach. But if that, and Time From US has the figure very strong as well.
Yeah.
And if that figure is legit, he's a better player in this race than his 9-2 suggests. And maybe he is a horse that is just getting good for Rick Dutrow. I don't mind the cutback. I actually kind of like the cutback in distance. I respect Rick. Maybe he's a new horse. For me, he's either a very clever pick, not clever, very good pick, or a very bad pick. I'm going to take a shot at price. It's a good pick, but I won't be surprised when it's a bad pick.
Yeah, I mean, that win, it was during the major hot streak that Dutrow was going through, where horses were improving and he was winning at a very high percentage.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah. But now, over the past month, he's still having plenty of success. It's just not the same jump off the page kind of numbers that we were seeing, but he's still winning at 25%, so it's not like you can knock anything that he's been doing.
Yeah, you know, there was a misconception by some people, which I don't really understand, because I've always been a very big fan of Rick's and always been on Rick's side in the whole situation that went down, where I was making comments about it as horses were setting, you know, new buyer tops. This is not to suggest there was something out of the ordinary. This is a very good trainer who had his horses running very well, and it was more of a point of pay attention to his horses, they're running well. I have an enormous amount of respect for him as a trainer. This guy, I mean, I've been around a long time. I know how good he is. And I also know things about him which are extremely complimentary, which other people do not know. Race number 3, and this is the Mama's Gold race running in the St. Florida Sandy, where, you know, if there was a bullet speed, and we'll take a look at him winning the last race, and you want to call him a her because Mama's in there, I want to because I want to get the sex wrong of every horse I talk about. It's sort of my thing. I would say I do it to annoy Greg, but I'm too brain dead to be able to do it for any other reason being brain dead. If there was another speed in this race, if there was a real sprint speed type horse in here, I might be inclined to say, you know, it's going to be a different ball game. He's not going to be in his comfort zone. But who's going to run with him early? I mean, he's running against a bunch of slowpokes in this race.
Yeah,
so
that's
the
the
idea that he's not going to be in front, I mean, yes, they went with Doc Sullivan last time, and maybe they'll go with him again. But if you're Doc Sullivan, do you really want to send after this horse?
That's the hard decision to make, because it seems as though his best chance to run one of his faster races is to be forward. But do you really want to challenge a horse like this early, who can still have the same kind of speed that he's displayed going that 1 1/8, at cutting back to the 7 furlongs?
Fast, shorter, yeah.
He's shown that he's certainly capable of that. But if you don't go with Doc Sullivan, isn't it sort of a lose-lose situation anyway?
Well, they could go and sit second. I mean, he's pretty good. It's not like Doc Sullivan has no chance to win. But I guess I would look at it this way. If Mama's Gold runs the kind of figures he ran in his last 2 races, it doesn't really matter. You can only sacrifice your horse in trying to, you know, defeat him,
right,
as well as defeating yourself. So I just don't, I mean, I don't know if it's a damned if you do, you damned if you don't. Maybe the best move is to just sort of sit second with Doc Sullivan. We'll take a look at his last race where he ran very well, and just sort of hope that he takes a little step forward and Mama's Gold takes a step back. I mean, I'm not ready to say that Mama's Gold is one of the better distance horses on the grounds, if not on the East Coast, because the kind of numbers he's running suggest he's belongs in great stakes company. I mean, seriously, I think you watch those races, you can dream about running this horse in bigger races going forward. But it's early in the year. These things don't always pan out. And Doc Sullivan ran very well last time. It was a dirty beat by him to Bank Frenzy, who's been very good.
He has been. And look, Doc Sullivan has a little bit more upside than a horse like Mama's Gold, who over the last 2 races, yes, he's gotten into those triple-digit buyer territory, but he's one that's progressively improved as he's grown up, and he came back with a strong performance in that last race. So I don't really have anything against him by any means. It's just sort of, where is he going to sit that is that successful trip, like we talked about?
Well, he's not a need-to-lead type, and he can sit second in this race and theoretically still win, but nobody's winning this race other than Mama's Gold if Mama's Gold shows up with his recent efforts. So I think you have to just approach it and say, I'm going to do what's best for my horse's chances, and hope that Mama's Gold doesn't show up, because if he does, doesn't matter what they do. You know, he can do a headstand and not win. What am I possibly missing other than it being a big price that Sheriff Bianco hasn't won a race since I had hair is going to somehow win, especially at a mile?
It's been a very long time. Look, he ran very well last time to finish 3rd at a big price, where the race was won by an even bigger price, dominating on the front end. But he is returning off very short rest, and Linda Rice has very good numbers when she brings horses back off 1 to 7 days. And when she's done it specifically with this horse, he tends to show up with one of his better efforts that's in the 90 territory.
Well, hang on a second. She did it 2 starts back, and he ran the same figure he always runs.
2 starts back on...
Yeah, he was coming back in 7 days rest on January 4th.
Yeah, but if you go back in the page to some of his prior races...
Might have been a little better going back. Has he ever been really good at a mile? Listen, he's a big price. You want to take a shot, go ahead. I don't understand what he's shown. I think what he's shown is he's just no longer can beat horses like this. But we'll see what. Listen, I think Lock and Key's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's quite good enough to beat these, but he's pretty good. But at the end of the day, it's a question of whether or not Mama's Gold shows up and runs those races. I kind of hope he does. I love that Jimmy Ferraro's doing well with him. I think it's a cool story, and Jimmy's a good trainer. It's nice to see him doing well with this horse. Race number 4, which will kick off the pick 6 with no carryover. This is a bit of a mess. Take a look at Maggie T's race 3 back. Is Maggie T the speed, or is she going to get a lot of pressure from some other horses, including the one that you have on top?
I don't know, but I don't like her last 2 races. If she runs a race like this race 3 back, where she was doing much better to sustain the kind of early speed that she has shown multiple times, then she's obviously a player. But she has not been able to have any sort of stamina over the last 2 races, and she was facing horses that are of the same ilk of the ones that she faced in those 2 starts where she just ran pretty lousy.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't trust her either. But I don't completely agree. I think that she's been running against better horses. I didn't think her last race was that bad. I think if she runs her last race, she has a real chance to win this race. I'm not sure. Listen, this is a very, very hard race. I didn't see your horse, but once again, I found this race extremely difficult, and I don't think I want to be in a position. I wouldn't want to be in a position in this race to tell anybody your horse has no chance, because this race just seems wide open to me.
I wouldn't want to take a huge stand in here either. I just opted for a horse that is at least dropping in class, and it has shown some good speed. She's coming out of races that are against much tougher horses that I didn't really like, Spencer Tiara and Grammy Girl, but they ran back to a number they had run in their prior start. We'll see them later on today, Grammy Girl that is. But the other two races that she was coming out of in Starter Allowance Company, they're just much better. And horses that are in great form right now versus the ones she's going to be facing in here.
I agree. She has run against better horses. I just think her form since she's been claimed by Jimmy has not been good. I'm not sure where that win came from, and I'm not sure she's going to be able to get loose because Maggie T has got to go from down towards the inside, and you know once again that Romero's not going to be looking to rate her. And I also think my horse, Jackie the Joker, is a horse that when she's good, she has speed. So I think you're going to see at least her be forward in this race. So I think the 5 finds herself in a sort of precarious position between horses. Now, once again, you've got an idea with the 5, and this is a race where I feel like you find a horse that you have a little bit of an idea with and you just go with it. Because we could go through it and you could pick, any of us could pick 6 or 7 horses in this race.
And make a little bit of a case.
And make a case for them, and there's a slight chance we'll be right and a better chance we'll be wrong, because I don't know who you can trust in this field.
Nobody.
And with Jackie the Joker, I thought it was an interesting claim by Vinny Scuderi and Rick Dutrow for a horse who last time out, obviously did not run well in that race, to be honest. I couldn't make a major excuse for her, but you look at races 2, 3, 4, 5 back. They're figures that can be fast enough. Now you get into Rick's barn. Now, obviously, coming from Ilkay, whose horses have been running extremely well, it's hard to say it's a significant move up. But this is a horse that had gotten pretty good, and she's best when she's forward. She draws outside, which I like for her, and I'll take a shot with her. But believe me, I don't love anybody in here, and I particularly don't love the 8. You've got her second. I've got her fourth, but I feel like this is a race where David's got her the 3-1 favorite. Whatever you do, bet against the favorite.
And with her, the only thing that I can say is at least she's reliable to hit the board, even though she hasn't won in a while. So there's your little bit of consistency within a race where you have a lot of horses that are very difficult to trust. You at least have an idea of what kind of race she's going to run, where she will show up with some sort of effort to hit the board in all likelihood. But again, at a short price, do I really want to take a horse that hasn't won in quite some time?
I did not like her last race, to be honest with you. We'll see what happens in race number 4, which is absolutely a skullbuster. Race number 5 didn't get a lot easier. I feel like I spent an enormous amount of time on these races. Now, I don't know how Strong Light ran this race last time out, because this horse had an absolutely ridiculous trip in here. Didn't break, rushed up, made a premature wide move, and just kept on running. And I will tell you, if Strong Light somehow reproduces this effort, and I don't buy the 82 figure from 4 back, because horses have not really run to that number, then he's going to be a handful in this race. But how can you possibly trust him to run it 2 times in a row?
Well, that's the thing. You can't really trust anybody to sort of have repeatable performances over their last couple of races and really run a number that's of that same quality, where he is a horse that doesn't usually show up with a 76 or something in the 70s. He's more of that mid-60s type of horse.
It's not just the figure he ran, it's the race he ran in doing it. He didn't get a lot of help in there, and he still managed to run that race. That was some performance.
I think a lot of it had to do with making that premature move, as you said, but to have him in better position at the top of the stretch than he usually ever is, he's kind of that close from last type of off-the-pace horse. He at least got himself into a position to strike in that spot, so I did like that he was a little bit more of a horse that wasn't doing himself any disservice by being too far back like he usually is. But again, he's difficult to trust. And now, for a horse that's generally a gigantic price, I don't want to take a shorter price on him to trust him to repeat it.
No, I don't disagree with any of that. I don't. It's hard to know what happened last time. It's hard to understand, because I don't believe in that figure 4 back. And otherwise, I mean, it's not just that he won. You should, if you haven't watched his race and you think I'm crazy, watch his race. I mean, all things
He was
being
much the
equal,
best.
he's supposed to win this race if he runs that race again.
Sure.
It's just very, very hard to trust him, and I think what you said is very true. You want to really take 5-1 on him today after he was 20-1 last time out, and that was a weird field he was in last time. Not that this isn't a bit of a weird field, but that was kind of a weird field. Good luck with Prince of Joy.
He's at least showing some signs of life, and he sort of is that horse that he rounds into his moment of form this time of year. His last 2 races, I thought, have been indicative of that, rallying for 4th, 2 back, finishing 2nd last time out, both with the 64
It was a hungry
buyers.
field last time.
It was, but he did at least put away the other horse who was forward, and there were no breathers. The 2 of them were going neck and neck until the top of the stretch, and he still held on after being a part of the pace that Bar 14 could not sustain whatsoever.
Well, Bar 14 can't run anymore. Bar 14 literally cannot run anymore, to be fair. Literally can't run. I mean, he probably should be retired. He can't run at all anymore.
That is fair, but at the same time, I just like that he was able to take some pressure and still be forward, and seems to be running some of his better races right now.
Okay. Good luck. I found this to be a very, very hard race. I even considered Centavo you have second because he has back races. It's a tough, low percentage barn for me to take, but I guess he's not impossible in this race. As far as allure of money, I'm taking this horse who's dropping down. He was in a race last time on a racetrack where speed was very good. He drops down. His race 2 back is fast enough to beat these horses. Yes, he was very, very much with the flow of the race that time. There's no question about it. But he still ran a decent enough figure, and he ran a figure of 65 2 back that might be competitive in here as well. And I'm simply taking him on the drop against a horse. I'm going to take a horse that's dropping as opposed to a lot of horses near that have been running in and around this lower level. And I just thought the drop down would do it for me.
Yeah, and both of those races that he comes out of last time out in 2 back, they've been productive moving forwards as well.
Yeah, I wish Debate had a little more speed, but I don't want to ignore that the horse picks up Manny Franco second off the claim for Wayne Potts, and he's another horse that is dropping down into the bottom level for the first time, and I think that's important. Is these bottom levels, you know, at the bottom level, they're worth between 0 and what they're running for, whereas a 15, a 20, they're worth 15, and there often is. We used to, in the old days when 14 was the bottom level, we used to call it first time 14. And it was amazing the prices you got on horses that were running in the bottom level claiming race for the very first time. We'll be back with the late pick 4 after a quick break.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling. As we get to race 6, I think this is 1 as we took an accidental bid. And, you know, it's funny. I watched this race. I was waiting for the subway. I had left, and I thought he won. I didn't realize until hours later. Aragona texted me about something, and I didn't realize that the horse had gotten up to beat him. I know he's quit at the end of his races. Well, maybe the cutback's going to help, and I don't know about you, but if he shows up today, he's got to beat this field. And if he loses, I don't know who the horse is. I want to bet against him.
Exactly. I couldn't make a big case for anybody else in here. He's the speed. He's first off the claim for Linda. Second as the favorite last time out to a big price, yes, where he just gets beat at the wire. But his last race, even though it was a regression in a way from his
Still
prior
probably
races, it's
beats
still
these horses.
faster than what any of
Yeah.
these horses have consistently run. And he's cutting back in distance, but he's run fast early before. So I don't think that that's going to dull his chances of being forward in this spot either. And he's just consistently been faster than anything we've seen from the rest of this field.
I agree. If there's somebody else in here that's interesting to beat him, I don't see it. I mean, I've got Stormy's Dream in second, but for me, if the 8 loses, I lose. I would single him. I understand if somebody says he just lost a race he shouldn't have lost. I think he's supposed to beat these horses today at a very, very short price. Race number 7, I thought was another one of those races where it was very tricky. Now, one of the things about race number 7 is, what do you do with Grammy Girl? You've got her second. I've got her fourth. She's run 2 very good races in a row. Now, it's important to note that they moved the Beyer figure up from a race 2 back when she ran as fast as she did last time. And I do look at that race last time, and I see 13 red flags, running a 70 Beyer, finishing a distant third, her best career number. And I wonder a little bit if that makes it too high. Then again, I loved 13 red flags in this race, so maybe I was right that she was ready to run her best race. It was still just 6 3/4 lengths behind the horse that won the race. I was right that she'd run well. I was just wrong that she'd run well enough to be even remotely competitive. So I don't really know what to do with it.
I don't either.
But I just feel like the cat is so completely out of the bag with this horse that do I really need her at 5-2 in this race, which I think might be a little bit more interesting than the one she's been running against.
I'm with you on that. I did not like her at all last time or the winner. I didn't like the race they were coming out of, and I was completely wrong. They both really
I didn't like
showed
them
up
either.
against horses that had been consistently running against Starter Allowance Company more so than they had. So I didn't like her, but the only thing that I can say against her is just that getting off a step slow has become a pattern for her, where she does have to sort of rush up into contention early. She usually gets that forward position regardless, but I just don't like to see that, especially with horses at short prices, where the waters are going to get progressively deeper if she keeps
agree.
running as well as she has.
And your horse is supposed to be the speed in here, and I agree she's dangerous as well. I just didn't feel like picking Rick Dutrow horses in every race
All day.
today.
Yeah, I mean,
But she could certainly win.
she's just sharp early. She's hasn't sustained that speed over the last 2 starts at Churchill Downs, but one was over a sloppy sealed track, so I can make an excuse for the regression 2 back. And last time out, it was a Beyer speed figure that was in line with what she generally puts forth. So I like that she's had a little time off since joining the barn. She runs here protected. I don't necessarily agree with Time Form US that she's going to be totally left alone early, but I do think that she is the speed of the speed.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a tricky thing. And it rarely happens, but she is the speed, at least on paper. You know, the one problem I had with her was she completely turned her life around when Sweeney traded her. You know, claimed her. I mean, you look at the races she ran before the claim, it's very hard to make her competitive in this race. And then he claims her. She moves up to a 70 and 80, and then she started to run backwards, and Rick claimed her. Now, maybe Rick can get her back to the good races she was running. And listen, if she runs an 80 Beyer, she's very likely to win this race. If she runs a 75, I think she has a pretty good chance she'll beat the 6 Grammy girl. I wondered, I hated the idea that she got so good for another trainer, and now Rick's had her, and he hasn't run her back for 2.5 months since that claim. But I'm not going to argue with you. She's a huge player in this race.
Do you think it's possible that she improved because they were actually putting her on the lead?
That's a fair point. Well, but she's been on the lead before and not exactly run those kind of numbers.
Right.
But maybe
progressive improvement.
Maybe she just ran
both.
better for Sweeney. We'll look at Patty Van Winkle, who I have second and you have nowhere. I know that she's moving up, but I thought that she'd be in a good stalking position. What do you not like about her?
It's just a big jump up in terms of her Beyer speed figure. Last time running a career best with an 81 when she had run the 63 prior, and also stepping up in class here. That race last time out, it makes her very dangerous. If she repeats it, she can be one that's in forward position and getting the outside speed draw. But I just want to see her do it again against better horses. She's defeating horses like She's Cool, who really never wins. And
I agree.
Is not the same level at C's.
But the one thing I'd say about her, and I think those are fair points, it's not like that figure came out of absolutely nowhere.
She has the 70s.
And, right, she's a little dirtied up because she's got a turf race. She's got a sloppy track race. Before that, she ran a 74 at Monmouth. She ran a 74 at Ellis, so she has lacked any consistency. But she has run decent numbers in the past to suggest that it didn't come absolutely out of nowhere. And I just thought maybe she's kind of the now horse for Mike Maker. But as far as Splashy, a horse I've never liked. But you know what? I know she's got to run faster than she's running those figures. But I like the fact that Linda's remaining aggressive with her. I mean, maybe this is a horse that they claim to breed. Kerry Brogdon, who owns the horse, is a breeder. So maybe this is a horse they're keeping out of claiming races, and they want to breed her, and they're going to give her one more race here, and then she's off to get bred, which seems like a possibility. I'm just guessing on this. But I see Kerry Brogdon owning her. I don't have a great memory of her owning too many horses around here, and since they do have a breeding operation, she may have been claimed as a horse. She's a flatter. There aren't too many flatters left. But I do think that she's improved in her races, and I don't even think her last race was that bad. She kind of broke a little slow. She got cancelled, as they say, after the start, where Eric just dragged her out of the race. And I think with Jose getting on her is a sign that Linda kind of agrees with that and puts her more in the race. I don't know if she's fast enough, but I like the fact that Linda remains in there. Now, maybe she's remaining in these races where she appears to be a bit above her head because they don't want to lose her, because they want to breed her, and you take one more shot. But I feel like she has a shot to keep improving for Linda, and I took a shot with her, getting a rider change after what I thought was a poorly judged ride last time.
Yeah, which is confusing because the ride 2 back where she was forward was
Well,
better.
there were a bunch of speeds, and that sometimes is intimidating to that rider when other people go to the lead. I don't understand it because I feel he's a very good rider when he's aggressive. And I don't understand the inclination to not want to be more forward, because when he rides forwardly, he's a good rider. Anyway, we'll move on to race number 8, another one that's not that easy. With the scratch of Liberty Central, though, isn't the possibility that our horse is the main speed kind of a good thought for poor Ray Handel, who's on a massively bad run?
I think that that's the case, but I do like that at least in his last
So am I,
race.
by the way, so I can relate, Ray.
Maybe this is the one that turns it around for everybody, but that's a lot of weight to carry. I like that in his last race, he showed a different dimension than we had really ever seen. And while he was with the flow of the race in there, he's never been a type to be off the pace and make up some ground and do anything meaningful where he is passing some horses. And that race has come back with horses running similar numbers or slightly better numbers than they had prior, with On the Hill, Kid Billy, and heavyweight champs running 1, 2, 3 in a different shuffled order in their next start. So I think that, yes, stretching out, he's going to be the speed in all likelihood in here, as he's going to be towards the inside, and that's the way that they've run prior to that.
Well,
last
he
start.
didn't change his running style last time. He came in badly at the start, slammed into the horse inside of him, and with a race that was contentious up front, he found himself in a position where there's nothing Romero could do. He couldn't be forward. And while I agree he ran well for that, I guess one of the problems is, was he kind of running when the race was over? I will say one thing about him. For those of you that like a gallop out, he just ran by everybody after the wire for whatever it's worth. I just thought he could be the speed, be forward in this race. And there's a lot of horses in here that I didn't really like, though I do think that St. Gaudens is going to run a lot better today.
I do as well. Was it the sloppy sealed track? Was it needing a race off the break? He has those 3 races after his debut that are all fast enough to win here by far, but I just want to see him sort of get back into some of his better running.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a pass for his last race. It was a sloppy sealed track. He didn't break very sharply. He kind of rushed up on the inside, and he looked like a horse that was uncomfortable to me, being down on the inside, probably not liking the track, and he's run too well in his prior starts. The other thing is, they're bringing this horse back, and it feels like he would lay him up again if there was an issue, and I just feel like he might be better than these horses because he has run some pretty decent races. But once again, he's a Chad Brown horse that's not going to be much price. Now, the odds are very different here because Cumberland Blues is not 8-5. Liberty Central was 8-5. I think Cumberland Blues is a little interesting in this race, and from a betting perspective, I like the entry scratched because Cumberland Blues, you know what's amazing for him?
What?
The only time he's ever run in a non-winners of one New York bred race was his 3rd career start.
Really?
Isn't it weird? I mean, this is a horse that was running some high figures while running in lower level claiming races. Did it never occur to Wayne Potts to look for a non-winners of one for this horse? It was bizarre, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Pat Quick went, wait a minute. I don't need to run this horse in cheaper races. So it's amazing. His 3rd start, he ran in a non-winners of one. I guess when Mark Holliday still had him. I just think it's fascinating, and I'm not sure his recent form is necessarily that bad. Who's that good in this race?
Nobody. And St. Gaudens is going to be an overwhelming favorite now because the other horse that was going to be a short price in this race isn't here.
And should he be an overwhelming favorite in here? No. And it's the Chad Brown factor. They're all just sort of kind of similar in this race. So I'm going to try to wire the field, but I'm curious what price Cumberland Blues goes off. They always seem to get a little of that residual money from the entry, but you know, he's an interesting horse, I thought, on his own. Race number 9, as we close it out. Doesn't it just feel like there's going to be some, at least, I mean, I shouldn't say it this way. There isn't as much pace in here, it depends obviously on what Wadja does. And we'll look at Wadja losing again last time, and I had bet Dangerous Driver to finish 2nd. But the reality of Dangerous Driver was he could not have gotten a better setup. Katie had him in an absolutely perfect spot. I mean, right here, I'm drooling, right? How am I possibly not going to win this race at this point? And he just doesn't seal the deal. So I don't know why I'm supposed to be excited about him because he just kind of lumbers along. Maybe Linda will will improve Waj off the claim, but in my opinion, he is a horse that has never done a meaningful stitch of running at any point in his races. He's just a horse that sort of runs along.
And always seems to take money for
Chad
the most
Brown.
part. Of course, connections, but over the last the short prices that he's been, he's not even hitting the board.
He was pathetic last
So
time. Pathetic.
Is he going to be a short price again today? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I really want anything to do with him? No.
He can win. I mean, I think we saw this race the same, and at least as opposed to last time out, there's just a lot less speed in this race, and I don't love him, but Diabolico. Oh, it's a dialed in. I just thought he was sort of logical. I know the barn doesn't win a lot of races, but I don't know. This horse just made a lot of sense, didn't he?
Yeah.
Dropping down.
Drops down, cuts back,
Spot.
forward last time, can forgive the debut, much tougher 2 starts ago, and his numbers just fit him well with this group, and he's had less chances than some of the other horses that look like they can be contentious in this spot, because after you get past the 3 that we have in consecutive order, who else do you really
I don't
think
find a
fits
single
here?
interesting thing about any one of them. Most of them had many chances to show us. And the thing is, I can't pick Dangerous Driver again. Could he win? Of course he could win. But you know what? He really should have won 2 back. He's 0 for 21 for a reason. Linda has pretty good numbers off the claim with maidens, but overall, maiden claimers off the claim, yes, she's 13 for 50, 26%, $1.31 ROI. So these are 8 to 5 shots that are winning 25% of the time. That's not going to get you money at the windows.
No.
And God, he's even money on the line. And I mean, the idea of picking Waja to me just makes me want to barf. Because this is, you know, people say, oh, Andy picks all the Chad Brown horses. I relish the opportunity to dump on a Chad Brown horse. And this horse has been very easy to dump on during his career. It's not just that he's slow. He has no acceleration. He never makes a move.
Yeah.
And that's kind of unusual. From that barn, you expect him to have some kind of move. And good luck to you with him, Linda. Maybe you'll get something out of him. He did cost a lot of money, but
Don't you think that if she really saw some room for improvement, she'd step him up?
yeah.
And she runs him at the same level?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Linda bought this horse expecting that she was going to get some improvement. I think she was happy he lost and she could run him back in a maiden claiming race. He is who he is.
Yep.
And he may win this race just as Dangerous Driver wins. But I think at the end of the day, neither you or I want to pick those horses.
No. I've gone with Dangerous Driver too many times to take him at what's not a gigantic price in here.
Should have won that day.
So,
That was,
just
I mean,
wanted
frankly,
somebody else.
he's lucky he beat Nil Rock for second.
Yeah.
I say I'm lucky he beat Nil Rock so I could hit the exacta. Sarah, thanks so much. Sarah will be back tomorrow as well, and she'll be out in the elements reporting as Maggie Wolfendale is off this weekend, and then she's heading down to Oak Lawn Park. Head on over to Naira Betts. You know what's funny?
What?
Did we go through all the slates to start the show? We didn't. What happened, Eddie?
I don't remember.
I did. I just realized that I never said anything about the Cross Country Pick 5 or the show. And I was thinking either I'm really losing my mind, which is always a possibility, or we didn't show them. But thanks, Eddie. That's on me, but thank you. At least I don't feel like I'm totally crazy. There's the this deposit. You worked well, and you did that well in your feet then while I was screwing everything up. Use bonus 200. We'll match for $200 of your initial deposit. Check out Track Stats when you're over there as well. We have a $10 money-back guarantee on the Risen Star. Bet 10 to win. Exactly 10 to win. And if you finish second or third, you get your money back. Now we have a cross-country pick 5. There it is. 5, 6, 7 at Oaklawn, 7 and 8 at Aqueduct. What could go wrong with all the post times being screwed up? And here it is. You've been waiting 1 to 3 on FS2, and then back on FS2, 4 to 6:30, with a whole assorted cast of nefarious characters. Chris Griffin's up for a big day. He'll be calling. Then he'll be taking over from me later in the day. He's got the reprise, the scratch and changes in just a few moments. Have a good one.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Aqueduct. At this time, we ask that you please rise, remove your caps as we honor America with the playing of the national anthem.